So Brianna Joy Gray had a discussion recently with Ralph Nader. There's two parts of this interview that I do want to touch on that I think these are really important parts about the interview. One part is this discussion about how do we stop organizations like AIPAC? How do you get that money out of electoral politics, right? And I'm going to show you who has actually taken pro-Israel lobby money. I'm going to show you that as well. The other piece that I want to discuss from this interview is this conversation about the Green Party, which I've been telling you guys before. Every party has its issues, but I also had explained to you guys, I've had Green Party members on the show before, and they've talked about some of the issues with the Green Party. And Ralph Nader is going to do that as well. And so I don't know if you have not seen this interview, you'll be hearing that for the first time on here tonight. So first, I want to get started with this discussion here about AIPAC. How do you stop them? How do you stop them from lobbying in Congress? And you're going to hear about the amount of immense power that they actually have over our politicians. Let's get into it.
Area after area, you cannot exaggerate the opposition, whether it's politicians in hock to corporations or corporations themselves, when there's nobody organized to oppose them. Now, when we got the environmental laws through, we got the consumer protection laws through, we've got OSHA laws through, with a few thousand people around the country organized to get on their members of Congress, to get into the media, to make sure there are public hearings, and to do it day after day. Now, let's look at the other part of your comment, AIPAC. Now, AIPAC and its associates have determined U.S. policy in the Middle East to an extraordinary degree. Everybody knows that. When they go up to Congress, they already have 400 votes out of 425 in the House.
Pause right there. Ralph Nader said when AIPAC goes to Congress, they already have 400 votes out of 425 in the House. What that means is that the majority of the Congress members are in support or in some type of solidarity with AIPAC and AIPAC's agenda. Now, with AIPAC, it's a little bit tricky. They don't donate to politicians directly. What they do is they lobby. So they have different ways of doing this. This is how some of these organizations and some of these companies are donating. In a way, it's like they're donating to the politician, but it's done in a different way. And it may be difficult to find, who's taking this money, who's in cahoots with it. But that right there tells you 400 votes out of 425, 400 of them are already bought and paid for in reference to AIPAC. That is why there's only, I think it was 22 members that they said signed that letter for a ceasefire. That's why it's only 22 people. Let's continue here.
And anywhere from 95 to 98 votes in the Senate, sometimes because two senators are absent. So
95 to 98 votes in the Senate. So they own most of the Senate too.
This is as high a degree of influence, even on resolutions passed while the Israelis are slaughtering Gaza in their periodic wars. Right when they're slaughtering Gaza, bombing the defenseless people, as the Haaretz columnist Gideon Levy has pointed out in his columns on more than one occasion, Congress is passing resolutions saying Israel has a right to defend itself. It's like the Palestinians don't have a right to defend themselves. Who's the subjugated and who's the subjugator? I mean,
and that's why, sorry to interrupt again, but this is exactly why when they decided to sign that letter that said they're offering unwavering support to Israel, this is why that passed so easily. This is why they have the rhetoric that they have. This is why they say that Israel has a right to defend itself, and you don't hear them say that the Palestinians have a right to defend themselves. That's a lot of people to be bought and paid for by one organization, We talk a lot about the politicians that are bought and paid for by Big Pharma, but that's nothing compared to how many of them are in cahoots with AIPAC.
Who's the colonized? Who's a colonizor? Who has 99% of the weapons and who hasn't got any weapons? And yet you can't get a member of Congress, with the exception of 20, as you indicated, to even mouth the words, the Palestinian families and people have a right to defend themselves. Okay. Now, you know what power AIPAC has? Here's what it has. They have honed civic action to a level that I've urged people who support AIPAC to open citizen action clinics all over the country to teach us how to organize on Congress on all kinds of civic issues in our country, some of which I've just mentioned. Here's what they do. First thing they do is they make a strong rhetorical case. Then they go out and they get about 300,000 people who are real activists in congressional districts. They have a major convention here of 10,000 every year where they summon the senators and representatives. I mean, you don't say no to an AIPAC convention. These 300,000 are given strict assignments, and they are motivated and mobilized. And the Holocaust is never far from their memories. And so they're motivated. And what do? Well, first of all, they introduce themselves personally to members of Congress. Have you ever seen AIPAC engaged in a mass demonstration or a march? They don't bother with things like that. They engage in personal
introductions, personal relationships. So this is what lobbyists do, right? Like, this is what they do. They go, I knew someone who was a lobbyist before. This is what they do. And they approach all of these congressmen individually. And this is part of the reason why I believe someone like RFK Jr., this is part of the reason why I believe he has the view that he has. This is why I believe he has the rhetoric that he has, because I believe he's been approached as well.
Pressure on members of Congress and their staff. They know about everything that they can learn. They know who the lawyers are, who the accountants are for the senators, representatives, who their doctors are, who they play golf with, and they start proselytizing those people. And so when the issue comes of how much money they're going to give to Israel, what kind of weapons, and on, it's all set up. They've done their homework. They're all over Capitol Hill. Now, let's say somebody defies them. If somebody defies them, they operate with a carrot and a stick. And if they show their, quote, strong friends of Israel, they give them AIPAC and associate AIPAC campaign money. They praise them. They invite them to dinners. If they defy them, then they look for a primary candidate. They start accusing them of anti-Semitism. They fill with switchboards, with calls. They demand meetings locally and on Capitol Hill. So you get members of Congress, even Arab Americans like Darrell Issa.
Before he gets into Darrell Issa, you know who that was done to? Cynthia McKinney. That happened to Cynthia McKinney. Cynthia McKinney was very outspoken when she was in Congress. Her and Dennis Kucinich were quite a pair. Like, those two were very outspoken, progressive. They did this to Cynthia McKinney. AIPAC came out, put up money against her, got someone to primary her, and that's how Cynthia McKinney was removed from Congress. And you know what's happening right now? Now they're trying to do this to the squad members. So I covered an article about this a couple days ago, that they're trying to get people to primary all the members of the squad to get all of them out. That's a powerful organization.
He was a Republican, and at the time from a safe district in California, and he's a multimillionaire. And he voted for a resolution condemning the people of Gaza and supporting Israel's bombing of Gaza in a prior war. 2014, 2009. And he's a Syrian American, and he's been to the Middle East. And I called him up and I said, Daryl, what are you doing voting against your own people? I mean, for heaven's sake, you know what the score is over there. You don't have to worry about re-election. You're a multimillionaire. You can fund your own campaign. And he paused and he said, well, you know why I voted for it? I said, why? He says, because he accused me of being anti-Semitic.
You hear that? So here was a former politician who was Syrian, and he voted against his own people. Now, where have we seen this before? We've seen Hakeem Jeffries do this. We've seen Richie Torres do this. We've seen Jim Clyburn do this kind of thing. Like I said, their representation in name only. But notice what Ralph Nader just said. He said, I did it because I didn't want them to accuse me of being anti-Semitic. And that's exactly what they did to someone like Cynthia McKinney. That's what she was called. She's still called that till this day, by the way. They pushed that fear onto the people.
Here's a guy who's an Arab, and they accuse him, and he's afraid of being accused of being anti-Semitic.
Right. Well, we all know what Semite means and all of that, but outside of that kind of strict definition, do you think that because he's Arab American, he feels more vulnerable to those kinds of attacks?
No, not at all. He's a very strong character. If you know anything about him, he's a real hawk. And he really went after Obama when he was chair of the House Oversight Committee. No, here's the point. The best point is, when you talk to members of Congress about AIPAC and Israel can do no wrong lobby, they basically say, look, these guys drive us nuts. They take up our time. We can't go anywhere in our district before they're on our back and accusing us of this and that. And so after all, we just say, here, we just throw in the towel. What do you want us to do? Well, there's not much of a counter lobby. The, Arab American Islamic lobby is getting a little bit more vociferous. They pulled off a great march in Washington, as you know, close to 200,000 people marched a few days ago on Saturday from Freedom Plaza to the White House. But they haven't shown the muscle that makes the media respect them. That was the biggest march in years in Washington since the Women's March on the first day after Trump took office. The biggest march. It was on page 28 next to the obituary page in New York Times. It was on the page 3, the Metro page in the Washington Post. And it isn't a Metro issue, it's a national, international issue. Now,
Okay. And I want to pause there and I want to go to the next part of this discussion in just a second. But I want to show you who is taking money from pro-Israel lobbies. And then we're going to go to the second part of that interview. Check this out. Now, all you have to do, if you go to Open Secrets and you go to pro-Israel, you go to single issue. So there's different issues that you can look up here, right? So the single issue that I chose is pro-Israel. And for the sake of it, I'm actually going to do all cycles, which goes all the way back to 1990, just to give you some type of perspective so you can see who at one point or another took money from a pro-Israel contributor. So it says pro-Israel money to Congress. Watch this. Some of these might surprise you. So I'm just going to point out a couple ones that I think obviously you'll recognize. Joe Biden, over 4 million. Everybody see that? Joe Biden. That shouldn't surprise you. Marsha Blackburn. She's been one of the ones criticizing people at the protest on social media. You can include her in that. We'll go through. Oh, I think I skipped over Cory Booker, Cory Booker has accepted over $750,000. Okay. So you'll understand why they have the talking points that they have and why they back the legislation that they back. Let's go down. There's a couple other ones I wanted to point out. Again, this is in the Senate. Hillary Clinton. She took over $2 million. Now, what I find interesting, so far, two of the candidates that took millions from those types of interest groups ran for president, Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. Continuing on, couple other ones I want to point out here. Chris Coons, the senator that was just approached by Aaron Mate on the train. He's taken over $258,000. Moving on. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's a couple ones I did want to show you. Kirsten Gillibrand, over $566,000. That one does not surprise me. Josh Hawley, over $81,000. Kamala Harris, you see this, over $182,000. Let's go to page 2. Pointing out all of them. Heidi Heitkamp, over $244,000. John Hickenlooper, I forgot about this guy, over $272,000. Let's go on. There's another one I wanted to tag. John Kennedy from Louisiana, over $189,000. Amy Klobuchar, over $664,000. This is why. Have you heard any of these people? Have you heard any of them call for a ceasefire? Okay, let's continue. Joe Manchin, of course, over $273,000. John McCain, over $1,491,000. Again, that's another one that's taken over more than $1 million and also ran for president. Let's go on. Robert Menendez, this is the gentleman that's just been ousted, over $2,433,000. See if there's another one here. I thought there was one more I wanted to highlight. Mitt Romney, over $975,000. And hold on to your seats, ladies and gentlemen. Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, over $80,000. Now, remember, this is over all time, going all the way back to 1990. So at some point, Bernie did accept money from pro-Israel interest group. At some point. We don't know when, but it did happen. And I also wanted to point out Chuck Schumer, over $1,725,000. He is also not called for a ceasefire, and neither has Bernie Sanders. There's Kirsten Sinema again. And then there was another one on this list I wanted to point to. Just got to find it. Where did it go? Elizabeth Warren, over $298,000, also not calling for a ceasefire. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the senators. We're going to bring up the congressmen. Sorry, let me go back. We're going to bring up the members of Congress. So members of the House. And again, we're going to sort by name. It's just easier that way. And then we'll go through. I'm just going to point out a couple because there's a lot of these guys. So we can go ahead and start with, a lot of these A's. There were certain ones I wanted to point to. I think it's all the way down here. Certain ones I want to highlight here. Jamal Bowman, over $30,000. I think his came from J Street, if I remember correctly. We're not going to go through all of these because there's so many people. And they won't let you put so many on a page, which is unfortunate. So we can go to some of the more or what people call some of the more progressive members. It might be easier that way. So that being said, let me go up. See who else we got here. Those are the C's. Go to the 4. D's. There's just so many. I think I need to go to 7. We'll go back to 6. Okay. Scrolling down here. Just going to get through the H's. Sorry, guys. So many people trying to get through most of them. Just want you to understand why they sell out Nader Jones. Remember this guy? Over 100,000. Yes, and I do call him the sellout. Joe Kennedy III, over 97,000. You see where this is going? He's the one that primary challenged Ed Markey, by the way. We are going to... Oh, I am going to 7. Okay. See here. Connor Lamb, over $114,000. Summer Lee, over $38,000. I think hers is probably also from J Street. And oh, there was one more I did want to check. I might have skipped over it. He may not be one of them. But the point that I'm trying to make, we're not going to be able to go through all of them. But the point that I'm trying to make is that obviously, as you can see, at some point in time, Ro Khanna, over $81,000, also has not called for a ceasefire. So at some point, and like I said, it could have been at the beginning of their career. It could have been it could have been at a point where some of them may not have had some of the same more progressive stances that they have now. But I wanted you to see that, because I just want you to see when Ralph Nader says they know they have 400 votes out of 425. There's not many that haven't taken money from some pro-Israel group at some form or another. So that's important to note. Sometimes people take it as individual payments. Now, this is something else you need to see, and then we'll get back to the video. AIPAC doesn't contribute directly to candidates, which pro-Israel groups do. So I want to show you here. Though AIPAC is an organization, as an organization, it cannot contribute to campaigns. Individuals who work for the organization have. And this is how they get around it sometimes. Like, it's not the organization that is donating to you directly, but individuals that work for the organization will. That's why Richie Torres has so much money from AIPAC. In the 2018 election cycle, individuals affiliated with the organization donated just $21,350 to 14 different candidates, 9 of whom were Democrats. No one associated with AIPAC gave any contributions to McCarthy. So this is going back then. And then I want to show you which groups do. And if you look at top recipients of pro-Israel campaign contributions in 2018, you'll see Robert Menendez, Ted Cruz, Sherrod Brown, Tammy Baldwin, and Beto O'Rourke. So Robert Menendez, that's the guy that was just ousted from New Jersey. And then if we go down here, it says the most involved group in terms of political contributions in 2018 was J Street, an organization which supports a strong U.S.-Israel relations and a two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. So I do remember correctly, Jamal Bowman has received funding from them. Again, sometimes it's individuals who work for the organization, but they can donate directly to the candidates. So we got to pay attention. This is why I say you got to follow the money.